HELLVERINE issue number 10 from Marvel Comics. So this is the end of the series, the final HELLVERINE issue, unless they end up bringing it back later on. But this is the end of this series. I didn't cover issue number 9, so I'll go over that super quickly. Basically, the government's pissed off at Project Hellfire because of what happened when Severeth and Hellhulk went around and started killing a bunch of people. So they basically put them under house arrest. It turns out that Lieutenant Townsend and Corporal Doden didn't die. They actually survived. Dr. Spivey and Akihiro are going through Severeth's things to see if they can find him. And eventually they realize why Severeth is doing what he's doing is because while Hellhulk was dismantled and his corpses like strewn about the world, he was stuck in hell being tortured by Mephisto. Eventually Akihiro meets up with Aurora, who I have no idea who she is. I'm not very knowledgeable on the Akihiro lore, but apparently they were lovers at some point. But she decides to like go investigate some information to help Akihiro stop Severeth. And he realizes that there's something wrong, like she hasn't returned yet. So he travels through a gateway into hell where he meets Aurora, but it turns out to actually be Mephisto. Mephisto says that he has Aurora trapped and she's going to be tortured unless you help me stop Hellhulk and Severeth. That's how this issue starts. It starts with HELLVERINE and Mephisto making a deal that HELLVERINE will help Mephisto stop Severeth and Hellhulk in return for freeing Aurora. So that's when we get a bunch of demons and they show up to Severeth, and one of them, who is the leader, makes a deal. Like he's like, I'll make your hell my own if you promise not to use your power against me and to give me protection. And Severeth says, sure. And so they shake hands and the promise is bound. And it turns out to be Mephisto. So basically Mephisto has made it so that Severeth can't use his magic on him. And then we just get an all-out attack. Mephisto easily stops Severeth. And Severeth is able to unleash Hellhulk. And so we get a fight between Hellhulk and Mephisto. I'll say this, the artwork reminds me very much of Zenscope comics. In the sense that it seems like everyone is kind of frozen. Like everyone's just kind of static in place. Even when you got HELLVERINE zooming around in his motorcycle and lopping off demon heads, it doesn't seem like anything is moving. Everything feels very static. And that's kind of been an issue with this series so far. It feels like we're just pretty much taking almost like stickers of these characters and then just kind of sticking them over a backdrop. I don't know if anyone grew up with this as a kid, but back in the 90s when I was a kid, there were these like toys that it was basically, it's almost kind of like reusable stickers. I remember I had one for Power Rangers. Well, they'll have a backdrop and then they'll have like the characters and the putty and villains and stuff, and they'll have them almost like, it's not quite magnets, it's not quite stickers, but it's kind of like an in-between, and you stick them to the backdrops, and you can basically like move them around whenever you want and stuff, and that's how you can have like a battle. Like the characters don't really move because they're just static pictures, but that's kind of what this feels like, where we have backgrounds, and then we're just kind of like putting static images, like PNGs of these characters over the backdrop. There's no movement in any of these images. But yeah, we have Hellhulk fighting against Mephisto as HELLVERINE runs around fighting demons and stuff. And Hellhulk starts beating the hell out of Mephisto, and it's actually kind of funny to see. Once again, it doesn't look like there's any like motion happening in this. So like in this scene right here, Hellhulk is obviously grabbing Mephisto by the leg and slamming him back and forth on the ground. But you don't really get to feel any of this motion happening. Meanwhile, Severeth is trying to rip Bagra-ghul out of Akihiro. And that's when Akihiro realizes that the two of them are one. That while Akihiro felt like Bagra-ghul was a parasite at first, they can't really live without each other. Like the pain that they've suffered and the pain that they've inflicted on others has bounded them together. And without Bagra-ghul, Akihiro wouldn't be able to survive. And that's when Project Hellfire shows up to save the day. And yeah, we get Mephisto dragging Hellhulk back into, like, I guess, a deeper hell. Akihiro as Bagra-ghul, he ends up torturing Severeth, and the day is saved. Akihiro has friends, he has family, and he's going to learn to lean on them in order to survive. And that's pretty much the end of the series. The way I feel about this series is the way I feel about a lot of Benjamin Percy stuff, where the story is cool and interesting, but it's too fast. Like, you never really allows things to breathe. It's just boom, 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 one thing after the next, after the next, after the next, which reminds me very much of Robert Kirkman stuff, or at least some of the stuff that I've read, like the Astounding Wolfman, where like things just happen at like breakneck speed. That's kind of what Benjamin Percy does. His stories are just, they're very cool, interesting ideas, but the execution is so fast that I feel like it doesn't live up to its potential. And that's kind of how this feels. This also feels like it basically, the series got canceled and Benjamin Percy's like, all right, we got to wrap everything up in like 2 issues, so let's speed run this thing. But the problem is that that's pretty much been all Benjamin Percy stuff. He's kind of like Stephen King in the sense that I feel like he doesn't know how to give us an ending without it being just super fast. That's been my problem with his Ghost Rider stuff, is that every arc ends way too quickly. It feels like we're building up to this badass villain, and then the villain gets stopped in like half an issue, not even. And that's kind of like with this, where it's like, oh, Severeth and Hellfolk are going around causing destruction, but then we don't really get to see any of that destruction. We just get to see like one panel or two of the destruction, and then immediately Mephisto's there to like make a deal with HELLVERINE, and then they're in hell and they're fighting. It's just like things just happen at breakneck speed, and there's no time to breathe. And this isn't just a problem with Benjamin Percy. It's been a problem with a bunch of comics, I've realized, where they either go way too fast and they don't give time to breathe, or they'll be way too slow and then they'll be way too fast. So I've had issues like, for example, Naruto and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, where the first 3 issues were pretty much pointless. It felt kind of like filler. And then the last 2 issues, everything happened at once. I've seen a lot of comics do this, where everything is either too slow or just way too fast. Or it'll be both, where like half the series will be super slow and then the last half will be just breakneck speed. I feel like, I don't know, there's some kind of problem with the writers nowadays where like they just, you need time to breathe. Don't have that time be too much, but just give us enough time so that, you know, kind of marinate on what's going on. Like we introduce these characters from Project Hellfire. I don't really care for them because we don't really get to see much of them. Like we never really got to see the bond that Akihiro apparently has with them. Like he considers them his family, but I never really got to see them being a family together. Other than one quick 1-page montage, like 3 issues back. Other than that, we don't really get to see them being a family together. Aurora. I'm assuming Aurora is like in previous series that has Akihiro in it. But as someone who hasn't read any of that, I have no idea who she is. So her being kidnapped and tortured by Mephisto doesn't really do anything for me. It would have been a lot better if we dedicated like an entire issue at least to them hanging out and just kind of going over their lives. Like for example, in the previous issue, Akihiro catches her up on what's going on. But we don't actually get to see that conversation happening. We just have him telling us, I spent the day telling Aurora everything that's been going on with Bagra-ghul, Project Hellfire, and Severeth. That was it. So it was a lot of tell us, not show us. And that's been a problem with a lot of comics nowadays, is that they're telling me things, but they're not showing it to me, which again goes hand in hand with the breakneck speed, where everything just kind of happens and you don't allow us to settle with the scene. All in all, I felt like this was cool ideas, not executed the way that they should. And so everything kind of just falls a little bit flat. I will like to see more HELLVERINE, and I wouldn't mind seeing more with Benjamin Percy. I just wish that Benjamin Percy either had a secondary writer or he had a better editor that will actually like sit with him and be like, hey, great idea, but we gotta change the flow a little bit. You're going way too fast on things. You're dropping things way too fast. That's been another problem with HELLVERINE, where like he fights his inner demons and then he immediately defeats all his inner demons in like the first 2 issues. And then he's on to the next thing. And then he's on to the next thing, and then the next thing. And it's like, you could have dragged that story out for a lot longer and really see him like dealing with his personal demons. It's not something that should just be easily fixed in 1 or 2 issues. So stuff like that, where really cool ideas, but they're just not executed to their full potential. And that's something that another writer or a better editor can really like just sit down and really hammer out some things with Percy and make it a bit better. Yeah, all in all, a bit disappointed, but kind of what I was expecting. Anyways, there you go, HELLVERINE, issue number 10 by Marvel. Hope you enjoyed. Hope to see you next time. Take care. Later. Thank you for watching my video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you didn't, I still want to thank you for watching it this far, and I hope the next one is more to your liking. With that said, thank you once again, and I hope you guys and gals have a good one. Later.